battered, but alive. He knew he couldn't make it back to the boat on his own, but he refused to give up. With a flicker of hope, he looked towards the horizon, desperately scanning for any signs of rescue. And then, like a beacon of hope, a tugboat appeared on the horizon, rushing towards him. It was the backup he had called for earlier. Francis felt a surge of relief and gratitude as he was pulled out of the water, specializing in sharks. Their unique videos showcased the lives of these creatures and dispelled many of the myths and misconceptions that surrounded them. They braved dangerous waters and weather to capture stunning footage that left viewers spellbound. Behind the camera, Matthew and Gina were not only colleagues, but also lifelong best friends, with a deep respect for the ocean and its inhabitants. That's why when their YouTube channel hit 1 million subscribers, Matthew and Gina were over the moon. They had come a long way since starting their wildlife documentaries together and wanted to celebrate with their loyal viewers. To show their gratitude, they decided to let their followers choose the topic for their next documentary. They set up a poll and asked viewers to vote for the wildlife they wanted to see next. The poll results were in, and the winner was the bull sharks of the Zambezi River in Mozambique. The duo packed their bags and headed to Mozambique, where they met up with their local guide, who would take them to the best spots to film the bull sharks. They spent several days on the river, getting up early in the morning to catch the sharks feeding, and staying out late at night to capture their nocturnal habits. The 3 days of the shoot had been nothing short of amazing. Matthew and Gina had captured some incredible footage of the bull sharks in the Zambezi River, showcasing their strength, speed, and grace. But there was something that had been nagging at Matthew ever since they arrived. Despite bull sharks being known to be solitary hunters, many of the sharks they observed were hunting in groups, coordinating their attacks, and sharing their prey. This was an unusual phenomenon, and Matthew couldn't help but wonder why this was happening. As he pondered this mystery, Gina simply shrugged it off, saying that it was just a coincidence. But Matthew knew there was more to it than that. He could sense it in the way the sharks moved, the way they communicated with each other, and the way they worked together to take down their prey. On the 4th day of their expedition along the river, while Gina and Matthew were busy filming at the mouth of the river, Gina's sharp eyes caught a glimpse of a bull shark going about its hunting routine, unperturbed by their presence. Gina signaled Matthew to join her in getting a better shot of the magnificent creature, but he urged her to leave the shark alone and exit the water. Gina, entranced by the shark's sleek movements, ignored his warnings and persisted in tracking the predator, unaware of the lurking danger nearby. Only when it was too late did she realize she had become the target of another apex predator. Dread washed over Gina as she faced a colossal 13-foot bull shark with lifeless eyes, realizing she was the hunted, not the hunter. Time stood still as she grappled with shock, her heart pounding in her chest as she tried to make sense of the situation. With lightning speed, the bull shark lunged at Gina, sinking its teeth into her neck. The sheer force of the attack was overwhelming, and Gina felt the crunch of bones as the shark's serrated teeth tore through her flesh. Blood gushed out of her carotid arteries, staining the once murky waters a horrifying shade of crimson red. Gina's body went into shock as she desperately tried to fend off the relentless predator, but her strength faded quickly. The pain in her grievous wound was unbearable, and the shark's thrashing only worsened the damage. Gina could feel her life draining away, her vision growing hazy as the world around her blurred into darkness. It was a harrowing and tragic end to what was supposed to be an ordinary day of filming. Matthew stood frozen in terror as he watched the horrific scene unfold before him. He couldn't move, couldn't bring himself to intervene as the bull shark continued to maul his best friend Gina to death. The sight was gut-wrenching, and Matthew felt a sense of helplessness wash over him. But the horror didn't end there. To Matthew's horror, he saw other bull sharks converging on the gruesome scene. They were drawn by the scent of blood in the water, and they were closing in fast. Matthew realized with a sinking feeling that Gina's brutal fate was not over yet. One particularly large bull shark, measured around 10 feet in length, charged towards Gina and bit her leg clean off her body. The shark swiftly grabbed its prize and disappeared into the depths of the water, leaving a trail of blood in its wake. The other bull sharks wasted no time in joining the feeding frenzy. They tore into Gina's lifeless, mangled body, ripping off her arms, legs, and head with vicious ferocity. The water turned a sickening shade of red as Gina's blood mixed with the surrounding currents. Matthew could hardly believe what he was witnessing. Within moments, nothing was left of Gina. Her body had been reduced to a gory mess, devoured by the hungry bull sharks, pinning her against the unforgiving glass wall of the aquarium. Ayumi's head struck the glass, a sickening thud echoing through the air. and warm blood oozed down her face, mixing with the salt water. The metallic scent of blood seemed to trigger a primal instinct in Kuro, as the once graceful shark now transformed into a frenzied beast. Thrashing violently in the water, jaws snapping dangerously close, Kuro's eyes were filled with a predatory's madness as Ayumi found herself trapped and at the mercy of a creature she had spent her life studying. Desperation surged through Ayumi as she realized the gravity of her situation. With adrenaline coursing through her veins, she kicked and thrashed, desperately trying to free herself from Kuro's jaws. But the shark's immense power was overwhelming. She felt the sharp pain of teeth sinking into her flesh, tearing her limbs apart one by one. Blood clouded the water around her, staining it a murky red, as Kuro tore into her with savage ferocity. Ayumi's screams were muffled by the water, her frantic movements fueled by sheer survival instinct. She fought with every ounce of strength she had left, her body writhing in agony as she refused to succumb to the relentless assault of the creature she had once studied, determined to cling to life until her very last breath. Amidst the chaos, one of the researchers caught wind of the commotion and immediately alerted the rest of the team. A rescue crew scrambled to the scene, but what they encountered left them paralyzed with shock. A ghastly scene before them was one of sheer horror. Ayumi's lifeless body bobbing in the water, her eyes frozen in a look of terror. Kuro was still in a frenzy, thrashing wildly and ripping chunks of flesh from Ayumi's body with a ferocity that defied belief. With a burst of speed, the shark launched itself out of the water and in one fluid motion devoured Ayumi's mangled remains in a gruesome display of savagery. The crew watched in disbelief and horror as the water swirled in a vortex of water, flesh, and blood. And just like that, Kuro disappeared into the depths, dragging Ayumi's... The great white shark, named Kuro, gracefully glided through the water, its sleek body a picture of power and grace. Ayumi had developed a special bond with Kuro during her time at the research facility. She had spent countless hours observing and documenting Kuro's behavior, and had grown to respect and admire the creature's beauty and strength. But today, something was off. Kuro was behaving unusually, swimming faster than usual, and bumping into walls of the aquarium with force. Ayumi furrowed her brow in concern as she observed Kuro's erratic behavior. She had never seen Kuro act like this before, and it sent a shiver down her spine. She decided to wrap up her observation and started making her way towards the surface. But before she could reach the top, Kuro suddenly changed direction and started circling her, its large black eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her heart skip a beat. Ayumi's heart pounded in her chest as she realized the danger she was in. She tried to swim away from Kuro, but the shark was relentless in its pursuit. It circled closer and closer, its powerful body cutting through the water with alarming speed. Ayumi's mind raced as she desperately tried to come up with a plan to escape the shark's deadly jaws. Before Ayumi could react, it happened. In a heart-stopping moment, Kuro charged at her with astonishing speed, a blur of sleek muscle and razor-sharp teeth. Ayumi was caught off guard, unable to evade the massive predator in time. With a bone-crushing impact, Kuro slammed into her, pinning her against the unforgiving glass wall of the aquarium. Ayumi's head struck the glass, a sickening thud echoing through the air, and warm blood oozed down her face, mixing with the salt water. The metallic scent of blood seemed to trigger a primal instinct in Kuro, as the once graceful shark now transformed into a frenzied beast. Thrashing violently in the water, jaws snapping dangerously close, Kuro's eyes were filled with a predatory's madness as Ayumi found herself trapped and at the mercy of a creature she had spent her life studying. Desperation surged through Ayumi as she realized the gravity of her situation. With adrenaline coursing through her veins, she kicked and thrashed, desperately trying to free herself from Kuro's jaws. But the shark's immense power was overwhelming. She felt the sharp pain of teeth sinking into her flesh, tearing her limbs apart one by one. Blood clouded the water around her, staining it a murky red, as Kuro tore into her with savage ferocity. Ayumi's screams were muffled by the water, her frantic movements fueled by sheer survival instinct. She fought with every ounce of strength she had left, her body writhing in agony as she refused to succumb to the relentless assault of the creature she had once studied, determined to cling to life until her very last breath. Amidst the chaos, one of the researchers caught wind of the commotion and immediately alerted the rest of the team. A rescue crew scrambled to the scene, but what they encountered left them paralyzed with shock. A ghastly scene before them was one of sheer horror. Ayumi's lifeless body bobbing in the water, her eyes frozen in a look of terror. Kuro was still in a frenzy, thrashing wildly and ripping chunks of flesh from Ayumi's body with a ferocity that defied belief. With a burst of speed, the shark launched itself out of the water and in one fluid motion devoured Ayumi's mangled remains in a gruesome display of savagery. The crew watched in disbelief and horror as the water swirled in a vortex of water, flesh, and blood. And just like that, Kuro disappeared into the depths, dragging Ayumi's tattered corpse behind it. After the initial shock of the attack, the rescue crew managed to gather themselves and quickly drain the aquarium water, revealing the grisly aftermath of Kuro's frenzy. Ayumi's once vibrant body had been brutally torn apart by the shark, and only her head remained, lifeless and rolling at the bottom of the tank. The scene was a gruesome sight to behold, one that left an indelible mark on the minds of all who witnessed it. The once bustling Shark Research Center now stood silent and empty, a solemn monument to the tragedy that had occurred within its walls. Even Kuro, the culprit behind the attack, met a tragic end, his life cut short by the consequences of his deadly actions. Euthanized as a result of the attack, Kuro's fate was a stark, observing and documenting the movements and habits of these magnificent creatures. Bull sharks are known for their aggressive nature and their ability to thrive in both saltwater and freshwater environments, making them a particularly fascinating subject for study. Dr. Sanchez had conducted extensive research on the social behavior and movement patterns of bull sharks. She is particularly interested in their migratory patterns and had used sophisticated tracking devices to follow individual sharks as they move between different habitats. Dr. Sanchez is also interested in the feeding habits of bull sharks, which are known to be opportunistic predators, feeding on a wide variety of prey, including fish, turtles, and even other sharks. She has studied the effects of changing ocean temperatures and other environmental factors on the distribution and abundance of prey species, which in turn can impact the behavior of bull sharks. She had received a grant to study the movements and behavior of bull sharks in the Gulf of Mexico and had been meticulously planning her research for months. The Gulf of Mexico was an ideal location for Dr. Sanchez's research, as it was home to a thriving population of bull sharks, ominous shape cutting through the water towards him. For a moment, they thought it was a friendly marine animal like a dolphin or whale, but the relief turned into sheer terror when they realized that it was an oceanic white-tipped shark, a predator renowned for its aggression and fearlessness. This was not just any shark, but a killing machine that could detect blood from miles away and could swim at incredible speeds of up to 25 miles per hour. Its sharp serrated teeth were designed to rip flesh and crush bones with ease, and its dark, lifeless eyes conveyed a cold, unfeeling hunger for flesh. As the shark closed in on Mason, its movements became more erratic and frenzied, and its large, muscular body seemed to dwarf the helpless fisherman. The water around it churned and frothed with an unsettling energy as the shark prepared to attack. The crew members felt a wave of panic wash over them as they realized that they were facing off against one of the most dangerous predators in the ocean. Mason fought to stay above the water, his muscles burning from the effort as he kicked and thrashed to keep the shark at bay. The oceanic white tip circled him, its dark, lifeless eyes fixed on his prey with a chilling intensity. Its sleek body moved with sinuous grace, closing in on Mason with each pass, its sharp teeth glinting in the sunlight. Desperate to save their company for any particular reason, he decided to take the boat for a trip around the island. The situation turned dire when the vessel's engine suddenly faltered, refusing to restart. Left stranded in the frigid waters near the island, Francis attempted to call for assistance, but was informed that it could be a considerable amount of time before a tugboat would arrive to aid him. With no means of propulsion and an uncertain wait ahead, he found himself in a precarious predicament. As Francis sat there waiting for the tugboat to rescue him and his stranded vessel, he couldn't help but feel restless. Something was nagging at him, like a persistent itch that he couldn't scratch. Suddenly, he remembered the acrid scent of smoke that had filled his nostrils earlier, emanating from the engine room. His curiosity piqued, he made his way to the aft of the boat, gingerly leaning over the edge of the deck to peer into the mechanical abyss below. It was then in that vulnerable position that fate decided to strike its cruel hand. Before Francis could react, a monstrous figure emerged from the depths of the frigid waters surrounding the boat. It was a behemoth of the sea, a great white shark, with jaws wide open and rows of serrated teeth glistening in the sunlight. With ferocious speed, it lunged at Francis, sinking its teeth into his shoulder with a bone-crushing force. A blood-curdling scream escaped Francis's lips as searing pain shot through his body. He felt as if his flesh was being torn apart, the shark's teeth slicing through his skin like a hot knife through butter. Blood poured out from the wound, mingling with the salty waters of the San Francisco Bay, staining the once calm surface a deep crimson. Francis thrashed and writhed, desperately trying to free himself from the jaws of the predator. But the shark's grip was relentless, its teeth sinking deeper into his shoulder with each thrash and pull. The excruciating pain was overwhelming, and Francis could feel his strength ebbing away, replaced by a numbing sensation as blood loss took its toll. As the water closed in around him, Francis realized he was in a fight for his life. He tried to fend off the shark with his free hand, desperately striking its sleek body, but it seemed impervious to his feeble attempts. The shark's thrashing movements only served to drag Francis further away from the safety of the boat, deeper into the icy waters of the bay. Francis felt a sense of hopelessness creeping over him. His body grew weak, and his vision blurred. He knew he was running out of time. But then, a surge of determination coursed through him, fueled by a primal instinct to survive. Summoning every ounce of strength he had, Francis reached out with his free hand and groped for the shark's eye. With a primal roar of pain and determination, Francis mustered every bit of strength he had to hold on to the shark's eye, feeling its squirming body thrash and writhe in agony beneath him. His grip was unrelenting, his fingers digging into the soft flesh of the predator's eye as he clung to life with every fiber of his being. The shark, shocked by the sudden attack, momentarily let go of Francis's shoulder, giving him the chance he needed to pull himself away from its razor-sharp teeth. Francis felt a searing pain rip through his flesh as he tore himself free, his shoulder and arm mangled beyond recognition. But he refused to give up even as the water around him turned crimson with his own blood. He knew that his only chance of survival was to fight back with everything he had. With a primal scream of defiance, Francis kicked the shark's nose with all his might, feeling the force of the impact reverberate through his entire body. The shark, stunned and in pain, swam away in a sudden burst of speed, disappearing into the murky depths. Francis was left floating in the water, bleeding and battered, but alive. He knew he couldn't make it back to the boat on his own, but he refused to give up. With a flicker of hope, he looked towards the horizon, desperately scanning for any signs of rescue. And then, like a beacon of hope, a tugboat appeared on the horizon, rushing towards him. It was the backup he had called for earlier. Aggression intensified. With lightning speed, the predator lunged at Mason, its jaws gaping wide, rows of teeth gleaming with a primal hunger. Mason's heart pounded in his chest as he grasped the rope, feeling the rough fibers bite into his hands. But before he could pull himself to safety, the shark struck. The creature had sensed his presence and was swimming towards him with incredible speed. With only seconds to spare, Brenton braced himself for impact and hit the water hard. He felt the sharp pain shoot through his side and knew immediately that he had broken a rib. But the pain was nothing compared to the terror he felt as he saw the shark circling around him. It was a massive creature with razor-sharp teeth and a hunger in its eyes. He mustered all of his strength and swam towards the surface, trying to stay calm despite the pain in his side. The shark was relentless, though, and continued to circle around him, waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike. Brenton knew he couldn't keep this up forever, and he needed to find a way out. He tried to swim away from the shark, but in the blink of an eye, the shark lunged towards him, and he swam headfirst into its mouth. The force of the bite caused significant trauma to Brenton's head and neck, and the shark's sharp teeth tore through his shoulders. Just when he thought all hope was lost, a group of dolphins appeared out of nowhere. They surrounded Brenton and chased off the shark with their powerful bodies and piercing calls. Brenton was in shock, but he knew he had been saved by these intelligent creatures. He climbed onto a nearby rock and collapsed, panting and clutching his bloodied shoulders. The dolphins swam around him for a few more moments before disappearing into the depths of the ocean. Brenton knew that he owed them his life and would never forget their bravery. Brenton then swam back to shore, bruised and battered, but alive. He knew that he'd been extremely lucky to still be alive despite being attacked by the great white shark, and he vowed to never take unnecessary risk again. But it shot through him, and he cried out in agony as blood clouded the water around him. The crew shouted in horror, trying to haul Mason aboard as the shark refused to let go. The beast thrashed and shook its massive head, determined to drag Mason under the water. The fisherman's grip on the rope faltered, but he clung on with all his strength, fueled by sheer willpower and the adrenaline coursing through his veins. In a heart-stopping moment, the shark ripped Mason's leg clean off, leaving a gruesome trail of blood in its wake. Mason screamed in agony, a primal scream that brought shivers down the spine of all his crewmates, trying desperately to pull him out of the water. The scene was brutal, the mixture of flesh and blood swirling like a vortex on the churning water. As they boarded a boat for a tour around the lake, their excitement grew, and they were mesmerized by the breathtaking scenery surrounding them. The lush greenery of the surrounding landscape, the tranquil waters of the lake, and the gentle breeze rustling through the trees created a serene atmosphere. The boat glided smoothly through the water. As the couple marveled at the beauty and regulator, her senses were heightened with anticipation. She felt as if she was about to enter a whole new world, a world filled with unknown creatures and unimaginable beauty. Lisa felt as though she was venturing into an uncharted universe as she sank into the depths of the ocean. Alien-like creatures surrounded her, flaunting their striking colors and unusual forms, as if they were plucked from the pages of a science fiction novel. Bright and vivid fish raced past her in flashes of neon, their scales gleaming in the sun's warm rays. In mesmerizing patterns, schools of silver fish swirled around her, as if in a trance, like a rhythmic and hypnotic dance. The beauty of the underwater world faded as Lisa's eyes fixated on a looming figure in the distance. It seemed to be emerging from the shadows of the murky depths, revealing its massive size. Her heart pounded in her chest as her breaths came in short, panicked gasps as she recognized the predator in front of her. A sense of dread washed over her as she could feel the hairs on the back of her neck stand on end. It was a tiger shark, easily measuring over 20 feet long, and its sleek body moved through the water with a graceful yet intimidating power. Lisa's mind raced as she tried to remember the guide's instructions on how to avoid attracting sharks, but her mind went on panic. Terror gripped Lisa as she frantically kicked her legs, feeling the weight of the ocean pressing down on her. She could feel her heart pounding in her chest, threatening to burst out of her ribcage as she struggled to gain some distance from the approaching creature. But her movements only seemed to incite the beast, causing it to move faster and closer towards her. Its powerful body sliced through the water, sending ripples across the surface as it moved with deadly intent. Lisa could feel the hairs on the back of her neck stand up as she realized that she was face to face with one of the ocean's most fearsome predators. Despite the guide's reassurances, Lisa could feel the weight of her fear pressing down on her chest like an anchor, dragging her deeper into the abyss of terror. Her heart pounded in her ears as she made her way towards the boat, her movements frantic and uncoordinated, like a panicked welcome them, with colorful fish darting and swirling around them, and coral swaying with otherworldly gardens. But as they ventured deeper, the water grew darker, and an uneasy feeling crept over them. Katie's senses sharpened as she noticed a foreboding shape lurking in the murky abyss below. Her heart skipped a beat as she squinted, trying to discern its identity, but it vanished before her eyes. The tension in the water was palpable, and a sense of mystery hung in the air, sending shivers down their spines. What could it have been? The couple exchanged nervous glances, their curiosity piqued, and a sense of trepidation gnawed at them as they continued to explore the enigmatic underwater world, wary of what other secrets it might hold. Little did they know, a colossal bull shark had been silently lurking in the unfathomable depths of the lake, keenly observing their every move. Drawn by the commotion caused by the boat, the predator had been stealthily closing in, patiently biding its time. John, unknowingly separated from Katie, found himself alone in the water, vulnerable and oblivious to the impending danger. With a sudden bone-chilling jolt, a fin sliced through the surface, sending ripples of fear through the air. The massive shark circled closer, its predatory instincts kicking into high gear. Its eyes glimmered with primal fear as it homed in on its prey. The water seemed to thicken with tension as the shark's sleek form glided sinuously through the shadows, circling John with calculated precision. The atmosphere was suffused with palpable suspense as the shark closed the distance, its dark eyes fixed on its unsuspecting target, ready to strike at any moment. The couple's idyllic swim had turned into a heart-stopping battle for survival, as John remained oblivious to the deadly predator lurking just beneath the surface, poised to unleash its primal power. Katie's heart skipped a beat as she realized the danger that her husband was in. She screamed, trying to warn John of the impending attack, but it was too late. In a split second, the bull shark shot out from under the water like a torpedo, its jaws clamping down on John's leg with brutal force. John cried out in agony as the shark thrashed, mauling him in a frenzy. Katie's screams echoed across the lake, alerting their guide, who was still on the boat. He sprang into action, grabbing a spear gun and a knife, and leapt into the water to rescue John. The water turned into a swirling vortex of blood and water as the shark continued its attack, tearing through John's flesh mercilessly. Katie could only watch in horror, paralyzed by fear. With adrenaline coursing through his veins, the guide deftly made his way towards John and the ferocious shark, his mind racing with urgency. As he closed in, he took a deep breath, steadying his nerves, and with one swift motion, thrust his spear gun into the side of the frenzied predator. The shark recoiled, its jaws tightening around John's body, unwilling to let go of its prey. Undeterred, the guide charged forward, his knife glinting menacingly in the murky water. With each frenzied stab, he fought with all his might, plunging his blade into the beast's belly in a desperate bid to free John from its relentless grip. The water boiled with tension as the predator thrashed and writhed, its primal instincts driving it to fight until the bitter end. The struggle was fierce, and the outcome uncertain, as the guide fought tooth and nail to save John from certain doom. The water seemed to tremble with the ferocity of the battle, the guide's frantic movements illuminated by the glimmering light of the underwater world. But with each passing second, the guide's efforts paid off, and the shark's grip on John began to loosen. The atmosphere was charged with nail-biting suspense as the guide valiantly battled the predator, fighting for the lives of those in his care. Minutes felt like an eternity as John endured the excruciating pain of the shark's attack. His vision blurred, and he felt his strength fading. Katie's cry spurred the guide to fight even harder, determined to save John. At last, the bull shark succumbed to its injuries, and with one final stab from the guide's knife, it released John and retreated into the depths of the lake. The guide swiftly pulled John's limp body towards the boat, leaving a trail of blood. Katie's emotions were a mix of relief and horror as she saw her husband's mangled leg, which lay in its tank, smashing into the walls and causing a panic among the visitors. The aquarium staff sprang into action, desperately trying to calm the beast and prevent any harm from coming to the visitors. The cause of the shark's sudden outburst remained a mystery, but many speculated it was due to stress or agitation from being cooped up in the small tank for so long. Regardless of the cause, the situation quickly spiraled out of control, with the shark becoming increasingly violent and aggressive. As the chaos ensued, the staff quickly ushered the terrified visitors to safety, but it soon became clear that the shark was beyond their control. Despite their best efforts, the animal continued to lash out, wreaking havoc in its surroundings and causing damage to the aquarium. The situation quickly became a matter of public concern, with news of the rogue shark spreading like wildfire. The authorities were called in to assist with the situation, but their efforts were met with limited success. The shark proved to be a formidable foe, defying all attempts to subdue it and wreaking havoc wherever it went. As the hours turned into days, the shark's rampage continued, and the city was brought to a standstill. The aquarium, once a source of wonder and amazement, had become a site of terror and chaos, and the great white at the center of it all. Despite their best efforts, the aquarium staff were unable to calm the shark, and it seemed that the situation was destined to end in tragedy. But then, a glimmer of hope emerged, an unlikely hero who would prove to be the key to resolving the crisis. Enter Tony, a marine biologist who had devoted his life to the study of sharks. Tony had been following the news of the shark's rampage with great interest and had a hunch that he might be able to help. Armed with his knowledge of shark behavior and an unshakable determination, he set out to the aquarium to take on the mighty beast. It was a risky move, but Tony was determined to try. Armed with only a wetsuit and a diving tank, he plunged into the tank to face the shark head-on. The shark, sensing a new challenger, turned its attention to Tony, preparing to strike. But Tony was ready. He knew that the key to calming the shark was to establish a connection with it, to show it that he was not a threat, but a fellow inhabitant of the ocean. With nerves of steel, he approached the shark, speaking to it in a calm, soothing voice. At first, the shark remained agitated, but slowly it began to respond to Tony's presence. As the minutes ticked by, the shark's movements became less frenzied, and it began to calm down, allowing Tony to approach it without fear of attack. And then, in a moment of pure magic, the shark and Tony connected. It was as though they were communicating on a level beyond words, with an unspoken understanding passing between them. The shark, which had been so aggressive and violent just moments before, now lay motionless as Tony gently stroked its fin. The crowd watching from outside the tank was silent, holding their breath as they watched the unlikely bond unfold before them. It was as though the shark had found a friend in Tony, someone who understood it and respected his power.